So, what about that jazz singer, right? I'm talking about the jazz singer from 1980, the one starring Neil Diamond. Not sure if it's supposed to be a remake. Didn't really actually into that, but I know there's another movie called The Jazz Singer that came way before that. But yeah, we're talking about the 1981 guys, and it's bad. But see, the hard thing about it is that it doesn't really do anything that makes it awful. Like it seems to have a reputation of being awful. Now there is one thing that's really awful about it, but I'll get into that in a bit. But looking at it, I'm like, it's not the worst movie I've seen. Like even for this month or other months or whatever. Like I'm talking about, of course, the January suck thing, but you know, I mean, its biggest crime is that it's really the type of movie that Walk Hard was satirizing. Like, I'm not saying that this was the main inspiration for Walk Hard, because there's plenty of stuff that was making fun of, but it's definitely like the kind of movie that you would look at and be like, okay, Walk Hard was clearly taking some thought out of this, or this movie doesn't work because we have Walk Hard, that kind of stuff. But if you need an idea on what it is, it's basically a movie about a singer who is trying to break out into the music scene. Early on, he's held back by his father, who's very Jewish. I mean, at times I was like, maybe I'm being a bit mean saying that he's like a Jewish stereotype, but then at other times I'm like, okay, yeah, he really does come off as a Jewish stereotype. Could be wrong, and I'll fully cop to that, but I'm just saying from what I saw, at times it got into stereotype territory, but whatever. So you got a boy who's man in this case, who's trying to be true to his faith, but wants to be more true to his music, but his father wants him to be true to his faith, and blah 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 blah. You got your typical biopic music tropes, like you got the first wife who was supportive but not supportive enough. Then you got the second wife who was more supportive and more accepting of his life. You got him rocketing into stardom, becoming a douche, finding his way, and then the happy ending where everything's resolved. That's this kind of movie, so it's really just boring for the most part. Some of the songs sound catchy. I don't know if I'd really listened to them beyond you know this viewing, like if I'd listened to them again, but for what it's worth, they weren't awful songs, so the movie's got that going for it. And then, well, actually not really then, because this is actually one of the earliest things that happened in the movie, and this is where I'm like, okay, if the movie was more like that consistently, I would have probably have said like, okay, I see why this is as bad as it is, but as is, it's just a boring music film. But early on, you get a whole bit where the main character is brought on with a band, which is consists of just black men, to like a black nightclub or something like that. And one for starters, I'm getting reminded of like Walk Hard Dewey Cox, where you know there was like the Jewish managers in that movie who came by at the club that Dewey Cox was working as a janitor for, and the lead musician got sick, so he had to fill in, and got famed that way. I kind of got reminded of that, but they take it to a level that I'm like, okay, even Dewey Cox didn't go this far into the racism, and they were playing it up as a racist little joke, but it made sense given that they're mocking it, and maybe they were mocking this movie in that scene, but even then, the way if Walk Hard was mocking the jazz singer, it was way more tame than what the jazz singer did. Because whereas in Walk Hard, it's like, okay, he just starts singing a black song, and and he's using some of the slang and whatnot. I'm not gonna say it here because I don't want to get into problems. But if you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. In the jazz singer, they're like, okay, well, this is a club for black people, and you got a band of like, I think 3 or 4, I forget exactly, black men and just one white guy. How are we gonna do this? Camera cuts straight to the scene where they're performing, and you see Neil Diamond in blackface. And when I saw that, I was just like, are they really doing this? Are you sure you want to do this? It just keeps on going with this, whole look where he's, in blackface, playing, and it plays a whole song, and as far as I remember, they didn't really seem to acknowledge it until the very end of the song, where someone actually, decided to point out, like, hey, that's not a black guy, that's a white guy, and fight breaks out, he goes to jail, and that's our introduction to the father. Now, if the movie was more like that, I'm like, okay, I see why the movie is hated, because this is really one of those movies that is, critically panned, in so many areas. So I'm like, okay, this has got to be something really bad. Is one of those really bad movies, and it's not. It's bad. It certainly is, but I wasn't agonizing in pain. I wasn't really all that bothered by the movie. I was just more or less like, okay, we got our standard music biopic here. I mean, maybe it's because I've seen Walk Hard, so some of the stuff was coming off as kind of funny to me once I started thinking about, like, okay, that's that beat in Walk Hard, that's that beat in Walk Hard. But even then, I've seen other music biopics that kind of bother me a little more than this one. This is really just more or less just, I mean, I guess possibly because it's not really a biopic. It's just structured like one. At least as far as I know, I don't think this is based on a true story of any kind. Again, I could be wrong, but I don't really see it. I haven't done my research, guys. Whatever. Sorry. People do a lot worse than me when it comes to this, so don't get on my case if I'm getting this wrong. But I don't know. I just can't really see myself complaining too much. Like I said, some of the songs were kind of nice. Nothing that I'd listen to again, but I was fine with them. I mean, the only thing that really bothered me, granted, I still laughed about it because it was so out of fucking nowhere, and I expected it, but at the same time I'm like, they're not gonna do that. They're not gonna do that. Like, holy shit, this movie is that racist enough to do it. And hey, this was in 1980, guys. I mean, granted, it's nearing 40 years, but that doesn't mean that it's not still close enough to say, like, see, racism didn't just end in the 60s or 40s or wherever you think it did. But yeah, just skip the movie. I mean, maybe just watch it for that blackface bit, just to see that I am telling the truth, because it's still crazy that I myself cannot believe it, especially considering for a movie that everywhere else is kind of boring. Like, the only thing that kind of gives you a hint that this might be a movie that would be willing to do that is that, like I said, the father is kind of stereotypical, but I'm like, again, I'm not as much of an expert to say that he definitely is. I'm just saying that from the way it looked like to me, at times I'm like, yeah, this seems a little too much into the Jewish stereotype. But I could be wrong. For sure, though, the blackface stuff is definitely racist. So it's bad. Oh well.